Oh, geez, that is a lot of people. All right, I'll wait for everyone to get seated, and then I'll start. Bam, he sat down. All right. Hi, all. Welcome to Morale Code, Tools and Techniques for Technical Leads. Any questions? No. Apologies. This talk was going to be with my mentee, but for certain reasons, they've had to recently, and I mean very recently, step down from this presentation. So first off, I'd like to thank him for all the hard work and time that went into this presentation. This presentation, where I'll share some of the hard lessons we've learned as senior developers and discuss the costs and benefits of what we've come to call morale programming. But first off, a brief introduction. I'm Adam Matthews, Technical Director at Lemonade Games, still, and former Senior Game Developer at Chaos Theory, Virtual Immersive, Third Sense, Robot House, and Hammerfall Publishing. In that time, I've worked on 13 release titles from the award-winning Warhammer Regicide and Rumu, the not-so-award-winning Hula Bear, AR, VR installations, and games to change like Kangazoo and Shamilla. Even questionable breaches in IP law, such as Space Force, Laser Saber game, only available on Android until Disney finds out. So, why am I talking to you today? Well, I thought, in my ignorance, that free GCAP tickets for a 45-minute talk was a steal. I didn't actually account for the fact that, I'd need to write a 45-minute speech. I definitely didn't account for the fact that I'll be doing it alone. And I certainly didn't account for the fact that I'll be fueled solely by rage. That rage, insanely and antithetically to almost everything I'm going to be talking about today, against all odds and common sense, drove me to still present something. See, 24 hours ago, this talk was about 45 minutes long. 24 hours ago, there would be someone standing probably here. 24 hours ago, I was a lot younger than I appear right now. I can't guarantee this is still going to be 45 minutes. I can't even guarantee it'll make sense. Really though, this talk has been in planning for quite some time, and I'm excited to finally deliver it, even if it's alone. So let's get started. First, with a little context. I met my mentee through the IGM mentorship program when we were at roughly the same senior positions in our careers. And I can't stress this enough, it was super weird. Here I was, supposed to mentor someone who's also a technical lead, a better one than me in many regards. I felt imposter syndrome like I never had in that moment. But what started as a bizarre pseudo-mentorship quickly shifted into a much more mutually beneficial opportunity. We were afforded the time each fortnight to connect and discuss our roles and responsibilities as leads for over a year. These discussions were independent of our companies and current projects, and crucially, we disagreed on many things. Something we cannot overstate the value of, and something I'll be returning to a little later on. Anyway, these discussions and our conflicting views led to some of the keenest insights and understandings in the ways we thought as leads. And I'd like to share those with you today because we really didn't see a lot of people talking about this stuff, particularly at venues like this. One topic we kept returning to was the cost of code. Not the dollar value, nor in terms of performance. Those things are important, but I mean the emotional impact on a programmer, their quality of life, their barriers to entry, their morale. And our duty as leads to achieve both long-term project goals while safeguarding the mental health of ourselves and the team. Because just like other senior management, as a lead, you are perfectly placed to have a significant impact on morale. Significant impact on morale and the mental health and morale of your team. Sorry. Granted, unlike directors, you can't solve all problems with a pizza party. But pizza or not, we have a big influence on project morale, and more often than not, in only a binary way. Programmer joke. That being either positively or negatively. You can either enhance or detract. There's very little in between, especially when you're making decisions around coding standards and project architecture. We found in our experience, the technical decisions you make as a lead are rarely met with total apathy. It's just the nature of this industry. All of us here didn't get into games because we like money. We probably do like money, but if we really liked it, we'd be working for a bank or some sort of Web3 AI crypto scam. No, we got into game development because we're passionate, but that passion is a double-edged sword. It means you care a lot. It means we care a lot about our code, but it means we care a lot about our code. And that's kind of what I mean by morale programming. It's well formed the foundation of pretty much everything I talked to you about today. Take, for example, the idea that most programmers hate programmers, especially themselves. I know I do. Okay, it might not be that bad. Unless you ask a question on Stack Overflow. This is a real trope and not an unfounded one. We're very opinionated. We're also very contradictory. We hate when things are tightly coupled. We hate when things are loosely coupled. We hate when things are in namespaces. We hate when things aren't in namespaces. We form these differences in opinion from experience, education, and personal preference. I think the only thing we all agree on is JavaScript sucks. Although I'm probably sure there's someone out there who's like, I like not knowing what my variable type is. We've got these Pavlov's dog knee-jerk responses to so many things. Maybe mine's JavaScript. Who can really say? Yeah, it is. What I mean to say is, we've developed a strong sense of what we don't like and what we like. Sometimes through experience, sometimes through education, and sometimes through recent pricing changes. This sense bleeds into our code, and if we're not careful, it bleeds into how we treat other people's code. If this is done with deliberate care, it can be a really great sense. It can help upskill and standardize code across our project. But if it's done with ignorant carelessness, it can be a really bad sense. It can lead to low morale and poor mental health for you and the team. I hope I don't have to explain how expensive this is, both in terms of morale, and this time, I also mean in terms of the dollar value of code. Because when you're working with low morale, mistakes tend to happen, and someone's going to have to clean that shit up. More on that a little bit later. So the difference is what we can define as morale programming. It's not some 1,000-line class with 60 member variables, littered with the latest language features, and not a single comment. It's not some hypothetical 500-line coroutine where you're left psychoanalyzing the author, trying to find out why they quit their job and fled to the EU. Hypothetical, all right? It's code that makes explicit sense. It's those structures that are well-defined. It's systems that are simple and easy to use. It's taking that little bit of extra time to examine what we've just written. Code that is created with morale in mind is simply a joy to work with. It's something that we should all strive to achieve, and it's something that we, as technical leads, should consider of paramount importance. But it's something that both me and my mentee were woefully unprepared for when assuming the role. See, when we first start out in game development, our concerns are typically short-term. How do I rotate the camera? How do I trigger the right animation? How do I define the parabolic flight path of a bird? How do I find the answers to all these questions without going on Stack Overflow? Our concerns are day-to-day, task-to-task, feature-to-feature. And that's good. Our training and skills were all geared towards achieving those immediate goals. Inevitably, we get to the point where our code can get into that unmanageable state. Massive disjointed objects, inconsistencies in logic, you get the idea. If you're anything like me, you think, I've got to blame the other guy. No, hopefully you think there's got to be a better way. How do other programmers avoid all this pain? So we start researching online, looking into literature, maybe making a few phone calls. It's around this point we've probably picked up some clean code principles like solid or dry. And maybe this helps. At the very least, we've started to think more about the impact of our code, that everything doesn't feel as throwaway as before. What you're probably not thinking about at this point is project-wide architecture, effective division of labor, or team morale. That's not your responsibility yet. And if it is, you're already a technical lead. Or you should really join a union. So the question is, when do those responsibilities shift? What new skills do you need, and who's going to train you? I wish I could say, when you start earning 85K, emotional intelligence, and ideally, your company will train you. But that's not always the case, is it? Expectation does not match reality, and in my experience, it's rare these answers will be so forthcoming. It's rare these questions would even be asked. One day, you simply wake up, and someone's like, hey, you're a senior developer, kid. It's like that level in Stalingrad. I mean, it's like the Stalingrad level in Call of Duty, where you're handed some ammo and told to follow the guy with the gun. When the guy with the gun dies, you're meant to pick up the gun, except the guy with the gun was Gary. And he didn't die, he just fled to the EU. So now you're the new Gary. The gun is the tech lead position. Stalingrad is a Christmas game. The Germans are a 500-line coroutine, and there's some kid behind you holding some ammo, waiting for you to die. What I'm trying to say is, you're not really prepared for it. And in our experience, you're not really trained for it. You might not even be told you're currently acting in the role. You might simply be the one with the most technical knowledge and responsibility who must assume the role. And that's the issue. Everything you've learned so far has been specifically tailored to address those immediate concerns at hand, those task-to-task features, those task-to-task issues. In fact, some of what you've learned, some of those skills, some of those principles that aided you before can now be detrimental or damaging to you and the team as you act in your new role. I'm just going to grab a drink. A good slide to have a sip of water on. So let's talk about that. Because as we said, we really don't see a lot of people talking about this stuff. This stuff being that inherent dogma in code. It's another topic me and my mentee discussed at length with regards to morale. It's that idea that things need to be done in a specific way. It's those principles and practices you've been told to rely on, lest something bad happen. It's a proverbial gun to your head. That's a water pistol, I guess, but now, if you're anything like me, here's where I'm going to destroy everything you love about coding. See, when we first met through the mentorship program, I thought I was holding the gun to my mentee's head. I thought I'll be bringing the enlightenment of clean code to him. Little did I know, he also had a gun. Remember how I said you might have picked up some clean code principles like solid or dry? If you're unfamiliar with them, it doesn't really matter for this talk. I do suggest you learn of them, but for now, just know there are a set of coding standards that attempt to set out and maintain a formalized structure for your project. There are fucking tons of these rules. You've got solid, dry, don't repeat yourself, dry, Yagni, KISS, WYSIWYG, Cupid, GRASP, IOC, COI, SOC, LOD, and of course, don't repeat yourself. These are all very real principles of object-oriented programming. Solid itself is 5 principles. You've got in there SRP, OCP, LSP, ISP, and DIP. That's only acronyms and initialisms. Then you've got things like the Boy Scout rule and design patterns like factory methods and facades and hexagonal architecture. Now, I only mentioned that last one because it's made by a guy named Cockburn, and I get to say Cockburn in a GCAP talk. It's also recorded. Now I'll be the first. I chose that. Now I'll be the first to admit, I actually kind of love this shit. I love these little rules. I love the clean little structures they can create. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently wrong with these things either. But not everyone's like me. Not everyone likes being put in a box, especially so many at once. And while these rules do provide some sort of structure, some sort of additional context for code, which is an admirable goal, there are simply too many to learn. There are so many that could be applicable to any given situation, so many that are advanced or esoteric, so many that either contradict others, conflict, or compete. The question really is, how can you champion and practice all these principles as a lead while enabling everyone in your team, that's everyone at various positions and proficiencies, how can you do that while still enabling everyone to do their jobs? You can't. You literally can't. You can promote the use of your favorites, but it's as they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And if you force it to drink, you're a fascist. This is the dogma we're talking about. You've been trained to use all these tools and establish a sense of which ones you like and don't like. But now you're in a position to affect morale, and not everyone will share your sensibilities. And if you try to enforce them, it's going to cost you and the team. Again, this is that cost of code thing we're talking about. Morale will take a hit. And while I don't want to stress the dollar value over morale, ultimately it is going to cost someone real dollars. So how do you decide on which principles and rules to follow? The solution isn't fascism. I hope that's clear. Hang on. The solution I've found. It's Marie Kondo. Now, I could have chosen a better slide for this, because what she's saying here does sound an awful lot like fascism. I'm also stating all of this from behind a lectern, so make of that what you will. But if you ignore all that, and remember Marie Kondo, she had this radical idea that maybe cleaning up can improve your mental health. It blew everyone's mind back in 2019 when it first hit Netflix. She called this philosophy the KonMari method, where you declutter by only keeping what sparks joy. You can use this on everything. She mainly uses it on material possessions, but why stop there? That meeting, the gym, your job, pets, friends, family, a 45-minute talk. If it doesn't spark joy, get it out of here. Actually, my dad probably practiced this when he left to get milk. Anyway, this goes for coding principles too. Because if I'm being entirely honest, I probably only use the first 2 letters of solid Even then, on a bad day, I'm not too concerned with the letter O, and don't even get me started on I. Actually, let's get started on I. It's a perfect example of what I mean. The interface segregation principle. No code should be forced to depend on methods it does not use. If you ask me, that sounds an awful lot like S, the single responsibility principle. Every object or function should have one responsibility. Are we all supposed to pretend like they don't mean the same thing? Seriously? They're both a part of solid. All right, okay, sorry. I'm going off on a bit on a tangent here, but like, what the fuck is that about? I is just a specific implementation of S. By practicing S, you get I. Anyway, back to the KonMari method. I'm not saying throw out everything. As I said, these principles have values and exist for a reason, except for the fucking interface segregation principle. But it's a balancing act. There may even be team, project, publisher, or client needs that dictate some of the rules and principles that must be kept or discarded. There may be some bitter pills some need to swallow for the greater good. It's your job as a lead to analyze what rules and principles are required to maximize the team's effectiveness and morale, and to make clear which rules are being practiced by the whole team. More importantly here, it's your job to answer those questions of why. Why you're practicing solid, why you're not concerned with dry, why things should be in folders, why a 500-line coroutine is never a good idea. Why is a great way to help the team understand and contextualize those bitter pills. They're still going to be bitter, but hopefully, why will at least let them know why they're swallowing them. But for you specifically, for the lead laying down these rules, your question is how? How are you going to know which rules and principles to follow? There's nothing particularly special here. It should be no secret. You should know what practices spark joy for your team. That is, if you're communicating with them. If you're already working with them, you should know what you should be implementing. It's also critical here to afford team members the benefit of the doubt and room to deviate from the standard practices you've laid down, so long as it's in a constructive manner. You're also going to have to swallow some of those bitter pills. This will give them ownership over the features they author, allow them to grow as programmers, and improve their morale. And who knows, you might even find some new effective principles or patterns to implement project-wide. You'll notice an improvement to morale. As pull requests pass more often, features are complete faster, the team upskill in areas they actually care about, and they're not hamstrung by the practices they don't all value. This isn't like carte blanche to do what you want. Remember, this is a balancing act. Experience should tell you that our friend Gary lost his mind for a reason. Maybe if he applied some of those principles to that 500-line coroutine, maybe if he swallowed some bitter pills, even if he didn't like them, I wouldn't have had to eat that shit sandwich. So let's talk about that, the shit sandwich. Thankfully, this talk is happening after lunch, so. Another topic we discussed at length, this was another topic we discussed at length in our meetings. It's another topic we found very little discourse around. You've probably all eaten a poopy panini. Oh, just get ready. This isn't some you eat 8 spiders a year while sleeping thing. Although, yeah, there is such a thing as the fecal oral route, so wash your hands. No. The rancid Reubens I'm talking about are those tasks you should not do, the tasks you should do, but don't have time. The lines of prototype code you swore wouldn't make it into release. Those fragile features that any one change could lead to total collapse. Those projects of spaghetti code and a 500-line coroutine someone wrote. It's likely you've made a few of these in your lifetime. Some intentional, some unintentional. Some you've had to eat, some you've fed to others. Many are inherently not that bad. Many are simply the result of coding. Many are caught immediately and unconsciously cleaned up. Of those that aren't, most will even go unnoticed. The problem is letting the larger ones lie around, letting them fester into objects that everyone interacts with, letting them grow into a veritable feast. I'm out of water. A cornucopia of shit, if you will. These are the real meals we're talking about. These are the ones that can have a detrimental, These are the ones that can have a detrimental effect to morale and force those hardline stances with coding principles and practices in the first place. These are the types that can really stink, and they're expensive to deal with. But how do you identify that stink? Oh, why am I doing that on this slide? That's gross. How do you identify these brown baguettes? There are many ways to go about this because there are many types of number 2 naan. One of the best is the aptly named code smell. Hopefully you're quite familiar with this term and have a well-developed olfactory system. If not, Refactoring Guru has a great breakdown of its many odors. Suffice to say, if it smells like shit, it's probably shit. A caveat to code smells is just because you can smell it doesn't mean everyone can. And that goes vice versa. Which brings me to a much more beneficial technique for identifying these steaming subs. That is, talking to your team. No matter how you do it, talking to your team members will give you the best chance of discovering code smells. But to improve this technique, if you're afforded the time, make it an official meeting or exercise. Maybe at the end of sprints, if you do that, or wherever makes the most sense. At Chaos Theory, we called this a technical burn down. This is where a few seniors on the project would meet up for about an hour or so, review the code, and list and discuss all the smells that could be found. Although this was typically only 2 seniors or leads in these meetings, everyone else was encouraged to assist by making the smells they found in code known through to-dos, fix-me's, and hacks directly. And let me tell you, programmers love doing this. As I said, we're very opinionated. Just ensure they do it with constructive criticism. Encouraging a culture of constructive criticism and open-candidness is the key here. Unfortunately, these are specialized skills of their own and ones I didn't have time to add into this talk. So I do recommend you follow up in your own time. Maybe get your hands on one of the more well-received books on the subject, like Radical Candor. In short, your goal here is to get open and honest feedback. Probe for those more personal turd toasties. In doing so, you'll be able to identify and preempt more issues than you normally would. Now, I've spoken about the more visible foul focaccias. Those tangible code smells? What about the intangible? What about those sensors everyone's cultivated? Those likes and dislikes for particular principles and practices. How do you detect those? Well, this might come as a shock to you, but it's talking to your team again. Like the tangible, if you're afforded the time, some of the best ways to go about this are through official meetings or exercises, like planning poker or pair programming. Or encouraging those weird impromptu group things that we do. You know, when you're trying to solve a particular bug and you just call everyone over and it becomes like a whole thing. Those interpersonal practices give you the chance to gauge an individual's personal sensibilities, those likes and dislikes. It also gives you a chance to potentially gauge their current state of mind. Discovering these less tangible shit sandwiches, along with the tangible, will enable you to gather data and present your concerns to production. Because the thing about these crappy croissants is, more often than not, we actually want to eat them. We know their problems, and we want to fix them. We want to chow down. Hell, most of the time, we're secretly stuffing our faces, squirreling away a few moments in the middle of a commit to clean something up. Occasionally, we ask production for a proper serve of something bigger. Don't think too hard about that, please. A sprint of refactoring, or at the very least, a day or two. Occasionally, we get that serve. A chance to address that feast, that cornucopia. But our time is precious, so it's up to us as leads to decide who eats and how much. Unless you're a solo dev. In that case, I hope you're hungry. All right, so how should we go about that? How should we distribute these shit sandwiches? Well, fortunately, as a lead, you should have the highest technical knowledge across the project and an acute understanding of everyone's capabilities. Hopefully, you should be the one with the most, or at the very least some, awareness of everyone's general level of morale, as this will be very important. See, the key here is emotional intelligence. I hope you're not unfamiliar with the term. It's the ability to use and understand the emotions of yourself and others to help overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. So essentially, we're fucked. The problem is, in our careers, up until a lead position, we've had very little need to exercise this skill. It's probably all stunted and underdeveloped, kind of like that Voldemort fetus. But don't worry, it's an easy skill to exercise, unless you're a psychopath. Let's do that really quick with a thought experiment. Imagine someone gave you a shit sandwich. Imagine you ate it, and then were immediately given a new one. Don't do that. Experiment over. Congratulations, you've all learned empathy. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but I hope you get the idea. Being aware of your team's capabilities, both professionally and emotionally, will help you distribute these shit sandwiches. It even works for solo devs. Not all the time, but it can. It's simply a case of objectively prioritizing what needs to be eaten, spreading those meals out, not overwhelming any one individual, and maybe rewarding them with something nice afterwards. Think of it like dessert after cleaning your plate. Except in this analogy, I've been talking about shit on your plate. There are also ways to make these sandwiches more appealing. Not by much. They are still shit sandwiches after all. But like, take the crust off, cut them into little triangles, sprinkle some hundreds and thousands on them. What I'm getting at here is maybe you can recontextualize the problem. Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's an opportunity. I know it sounds corny. It also sounds very condescending. But it's an excellent way of making these shit sandwiches a little bit more palatable. Architectural issues are a chance to refactor and research. They're opportunities to revisit and refine those principles you set down for the success and stability of a project. Insurmountable or overwhelming tasks are a pretext for training and upskilling. They're opportunities to identify areas for growth, to pair program, and build a stronger team. A 500-line coroutine is still a 500-line coroutine, but it's an opportunity to see Paris and Rome. Needless to say, this doesn't always work, but it goes a long way to improving morale and the program's quality of life. So now, let's close this out with the question, why are we here? And I don't mean why as in forcing glitter pills down your dog's throat. What I do mean is, why am I up here right now? Why am I talking to you about shit sandwiches, Marie Kondo, and moral code? It's because, as I said, at these places, at GCAP, GDC, online, or in literature, we rarely see these topics for programmers. Well, my bad. They're important. In one of our meetings, my mentee said, our jobs are talking to machines, and we kind of end up learning like that. We kind of end up talking to others like that too. He forgot he said it, but it really stuck with me. And I think it's true. I think this affects the quality of our discourse. If you go to talks from other disciplines, you'll hear about emotional intelligence, morale, and culture all the time. In doing so, you might also hear about a Facebook group where 1.5 million people pretend to be ants. But you pick up an appreciation for these topics. It's just in programming these topics, they're really just something we don't hear about. Not the ants. But in our talks and online, you rarely get told about the human aspect of your work, about the emotional impact your decisions and code can have on others. That all those rules are more like guidelines, more like what you call guidelines than actual rules. That sometimes you have to block your nose and fucking chow down on some shit from time to time. That sometimes you might want to do that. What it took for me to learn this was having the mentorship program as a foundation for these topics. It was having someone viscerally disagree with my admiration for Solid and poking holes in all my values. Now, I'm overstating that last part. We didn't disagree on everything, but where it mattered, we had differing views and values. As I said way back at the start of this talk, I cannot overstate the value of having someone sort of at that same career level as you, with no skin in the game, so to speak. That is someone from outside of your business that you can meet with professionally, respect professionally, and have disagreements with, semi-professionally. That is, have disagreements in a constructive manner. When I said, I love these little rules, all those little design principles and patterns, I meant it. I love them. But I'm a little freak. I might read about the latest design pattern or update to C# and get super excited, immediately turn around and subject my projects to it, and subject my coworkers to it. What it took for me was my mentee being like, slow your roll, buddy. For me, sorry. That's what it took for me to realize what I was doing, the effect I was having, and the effect I was probably having on morale. It took him disagreeing with what I thought were the sacred texts. These disagreements were usually unplanned and unprompted. We might go into one of our meetings talking about some crazy cool link query I made, and he would offhandedly say, we don't use link in runtime code. Suddenly, the entire meeting plan is out the window faster than an imperial governor in Prague. 1419 or 1618, take your pick. We'd be talking for the next hour or so about the pros and cons of link and other such tools. Importantly here, this was a back and forth. We'd be accepting of different opinions and views and values and relenting of our own, and ultimately coming to some sort of consensus on the project. On the problem. Or at the very least, would find some sort of mutual respect for the differences in opinion. All of this has been a really long-winded way of trying to reinforce that point. I cannot overstate the value in this type of relationship. I highly recommend you try to find that buddy for yourself. This isn't your guy in the chair or your Joker to Batman. It's a weird amalgamation of the two. Somewhere in the middle there, someone will help you find a solution to the situation at hand by telling you all your principles are shit. Someone who will discuss the more esoteric aspects of programming with you. Aspects like what we've discussed here. Aspects like moral code, Marie Kondo, and shit sandwiches. Now, I'm not trying to start a new dogma. Ultimately, We just wanted to get the conversation started because it's something we feel is lacking in this industry. We want people to talk about this stuff because we believe wholeheartedly that these endemic issues are a cost to code. They're a cost to morale. They're all cost in real dollars. Many of the problems we face are ones we built ourselves. By asking these questions, we can learn from those who've come before and together build better systems and better teams. Thank you. I'm guessing we have a lot of time for questions. We've got a mic roaming around. I can also just repeat the questions but I also can't see. Awesome, it's down the bottom, yeah.
Oh, I didn't have a question.
Oh, you didn't have a question. Anyone have a question?
Any questions? Oh, there we go. Oh, there's a few, okay.
Come to you next.
I can actually see. Oh my God.
I'm closer, proximity wins. I have a silly question for you. I find that most of your talk here seems biographical for me. Like I've encountered the same issues where you accidentally find yourself in a leadership role and all of a sudden eyes are pointed towards you and you realise that, hey, I'm great at code, but I have no idea how people internalise their process and what process works best for them, but isn't necessarily my way of doing things. So I guess the question really is, how do we get better at communicating what lead development is? And how do we provide tools for each other so we can make that leap from developer to lead developer? There's this black hole, I find, where there just isn't a lot of this is what it is and this is how you go about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we did this talk. We found that black hole was like very real. Like my mentee didn't even really like know that he was a lead at that stage. And it took just being like, yeah, you're now running a team of people. I think it's doing talks like this, like starting that discussion, because like, yeah, your guess is as good as mine, buddy. Like, I'm still figuring this out. If I was to give like some practical advice though, I think starting to talk to like the other disciplines, like particularly I would say like producers, where their primary concern is like team morale and productivity. Like they can give you a lot of really good tools to start like building up those skills.
Good question.
Someone back there.
Awesome chat. Two
Thanks.
questions. One, did you spend most of the time thinking of multiple ways to describe feces? And two, am I Gary?
Huh? No, you're not Gary. Don't worry, Pete.
Cool.
I can't see you, but I can tell you.
Good to know.
Nah, you're good. Don't worry. You did help with this discussion, though. And yes, I did spend a very, very long time trying to find every alternative to shit sandwich that I could. I also asked a lot of people. It was a very weird conversation to have over dinner.
Thank you. Do you have recommendations on how to have these conversations about different coding standards, especially when there's like a power dynamic? And especially when the person you're talking to is not a junior, because with a junior, it's more like, oh, this is a mentorship situation, but when the person is really experienced already, so they might feel like, oh, an attack.
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, I would say, like, it is, you have to be in a place where candidness is encouraged, and you need to have a team that is willing to hear, like, differing opinions. Like speaking truth to power is like super hard. Like I'm an absolute freak and I just like say whatever I want kind of stuff, and it's weird. But it seems like, I guess like if it's coming from a place of like genuine concern and like genuine like empathy, then you should be able to talk to your leads about like, hey, I don't like this particular pattern, or I want to try something new. They should be really keen to actually hear that. Like, I think that's like super important as a tech lead or as any lead, is to hear like your juniors be like, I want to upskill. Like, and I want to try something new. And if they don't know what it is, like if I didn't know what a practice that my junior was like looking at, I would probably want to join them on that journey. So yeah, I don't know how to say it's like, it's about the company you work at. They need to want to do this. I hope that helps.
In dealing with, I guess, more surface level code issues like style or what you can get from an automated smell check, do you find that automating it reduces friction or at least depersonalizes delivering that kind of fascism into the pipeline?
I think it might actually do the opposite. Like, I would hate for a machine to be like, you suck. Like, I like having those discussions when someone's gone off script. Like, I probably, that was my entire time at Chaos Theory, was probably just doing that, being like, what's going on? Why is this written this way? And we'll have like an awesome talk about it. I'll learn something new, and I would come to appreciate like maybe a new point of view. Yeah, but when it comes to like detecting the smells, just because you can see it and just because it's there doesn't mean you like have to do anything about it. It's really about sort of prioritizing the ones that are important, and like that comes with experience. That's the really unfortunate part about that. It's like you can commit a lot to cleaning up stuff that no one will ever touch again. And it's just like, I think it might just be an experience thing where you can decide which ones to actually eat. One more? Okay.
Thanks very much for this.
No worries.
I think it's been mentioned a couple of times sort of in the questions and in the talk, sort of like that idea of, hey, you're now a lead, figure out what this is like, kind of like that. I think to sort of pose a flip side question, if when choosing and identifying and picking a new lead in a different situation, how would you want the situation to be approached better, if it could be?
Officially, like really, it has like a freaking ceremony would be awesome. Like getting given, like, I don't know, a scepter or something. Like no, I mean, seriously though, actually making it an official thing, like if you're starting a new project and you've got like your team starting out, and maybe you want to like bring a junior up to, or not a junior, like a mid or a senior up to that lead position. It's like, make it official, make it like a really cool little thing for them, and let everyone like join in so that they can see that like someone is stepping into this like leadership role, and that like you should be looking to them and they should be looking to you for like a certain change in like the relationship and that sort of like that dynamic. I don't want to call it like a power dynamic, because I think like you can learn a lot from the like everyone going through programming. But yeah, hell yeah, give me a scepter.
Hell yeah, thank you.
Oh, so we're gonna end it there, or all right, get the hell out of here.